Hey guys, if you don't know me, my name is Adar and I'm a student at the University of Waterloo. I'm going to be talking about the admission process and kind of debunking the myths behind Waterloo's admission system and the AIF. I've seen a couple of these online for computer science and engineering, but I decided to do something different because I'm in the double degree. So I decided to talk about the admission process from a double degree perspective, which is business and computer science. So if you're interested in those topics, follow me. Now, firstly, you might be a little bit confused because when you search up computer science and business administration double degree, you find that there are actually three options. And what are these three options? Well, these three options consist of three different programs that are actually very similar. So firstly, the program I'm in, which is the University of Waterloo based double degree. And how this works is that you study computer science at Waterloo and you study business administration at Laurier. In the end, I'll get a University of Waterloo degree in computer science and I'll get a degree in business administration from Laurier. But the only difference is that I'm gonna be getting my co-ops, my residence, my tuition, and my clubs and teams all through Waterloo. Now, there's a second program which is very similar. Same thing, you do computer science at Waterloo, you get the Waterloo degree, and you do business administration at Laurier, and you get the Laurier degree. But here, your tuition, residence, clubs and teams, and co-ops are all done through Laurier. And this is a key thing I didn't know until later. I thought they were the same and you can apply to both and it's kind of like a two-way ticket to get in. But it's not. Here's the catch. So firstly, in the Laurier based, which means where Laurier is your home school, you only get 4 co-ops compared to 5. In the Waterloo one, you get 5. Another catch is that in the Laurier one, you apply to co-ops through Laurier's platform, which is Navigator. In Waterloo's one, you use Waterloo Works. And that is something that changed my opinion and kind of led me to accepting Waterloo over Laurier. Although Laurier might have, better residences and stuff from what I've heard and better student experiences. But personally, the co-op was the biggest thing for me. Now I'm going to talk about the third option. Now the third option is where you do both computer science and business administration all at Laurier. Again, so you get both your degrees from Laurier and you get your experience, which means your co-op, from Laurier. So there's no involvement of any other third party or like any other university like Waterloo or any other university, just Laurier. So that's the difference between all three. And for me, a key takeaway was that the co-op, because that's something I did not know until after I applied, and it's something I feel like is not clear, and that's why I'd like to clear that up. So the biggest thing is that your home school decides your residence, who you pay tuition to, your clubs and teams, and your co-ops. So if you want to, make use of Waterloo's co-op system, I suggest that you go for the Waterloo-based one. One thing I'd like to mention, although I talked about the Laurier only double degree, I will not be elaborating on it because I did not apply to that program, so I'm not the best person to ask. I will, however, talk about the Laurier-based and Waterloo-based double degrees. So now let's actually take a look at marks and some basic admission requirements. Some marks, courses, that kind of stuff before we get into the AIF, which is a big portion of Waterloo's application system. So let's take a look at the website. Business Administration, Laurier, Computer Science, Waterloo, double degree. So this means that you do business at Laurier, computer science at Waterloo. Combine the worlds of bytes and business. Again, it talks about kind of some of the stuff that you're going to learn, like mathematics, computer programming, data structures, algorithms, software engineering, operating systems, and kind of like more computing stuff. And then it'll talk about the business stuff that you'll learn, like, for example, finance, accounting, marketing, organizational behavior, etc., etc. It also talks about how you get 4 to 5 terms of real-world work experience. And in just 5 years, you'll have co-ops, 4 to 5 co-ops, a Bachelor of Computer Science from the University of Waterloo, and a Bachelor of Business Administration from Laurier. Now let's take a look at the admission requirements. So all universities take a look at your top 6 courses, top 6. And this has to include advanced functions, calculus and vectors, any grade 12U English, 1 other 4U course, and 2 other courses of your choice. They also recommend that you take grade 11 computer science just so that you have some computer science background, because the people you'll be competing with have experience and will be able to like have that experience and be taking those courses. It's likely that they'll be taking those courses. So that's why they recommend that you take it as well, just so that you have some experience or some knowledge before entering the field. Now, I recommend that you keep these a part of your top 6 because every university tries to look at your top 6, including these, right? So even if these weren't a part of your top 6, they'd only look at, like, say, your top 2 and then look at these, right? So it's best to keep these a part of your top 6. And for me, my advanced functions and calculus and vectors were my top 6, or part of my top 6. However, my English mark was a little weak because my writing skills weren't great, but also because my school's English department was a little picky. I can actually put up my marks right here, so you guys can take a look and just get an idea of what my marks were like. So as you can see, my marks weren't as high as other people who posted videos of them getting into computer science just at Waterloo. And a lot of people say, oh, I can't get into Waterloo if I don't have a high 90 or like mid to high 90. And that's actually not true, because I got in with not as high of a mark, and also I know other people who've gotten in with lower marks than mine. So it really depends on this right here. It's called the Admission Information Form, which is the AIF, and we'll dive into that next. Keep in mind, these are also admission requirements for Ontario, and you can take a look at the outside of Ontario admission requirements here. And again, admission averages, it's individual selection, which means that your marks don't mean everything. There's also the AIF. So if you feel like your marks are a little bit too low, but you're not out of reach, you can, and if you have a good application, you might still have a chance. They also say that you should participate in their contests because it helps boost your admission process and admission status, and also they also consider you for their entrance scholarships in the Faculty of Mathematics. Here it gives you a little bit of where to apply, Waterloo or Laurier, and it kind of mentions the whole home university or home school stuff that I was talking about earlier, but it's not very detailed. So the difference is, again, your residence, scholarships, co-op process, and clubs and teams and student life facilities are all through your home university. Keep in mind, this is the big one, co-op. So if you want to make use of Waterloo's co-op portal, apply to Waterloo's side, like apply to Waterloo side double degree. And that might be more beneficial to you than the Laurier based. Now, speaking of Laurier based, let's take a look at Laurier side double degree. Again, business administration at Laurier, computer science at University of Waterloo, double degree. Here, it's the same idea. You take your computer science course at University of Waterloo, get your degree from there. You get your business administration degree from Laurier. Here, the admission requirements are a little bit different because here they're more based off of your marks, whereas in Waterloo it's AIF and your marks. Here it's more so your grades. So it says minimum admission range is mid-90s. It also gives you the competitive admission range from last year's admitted students. So what you need to have to be competitive or to have a chance, strong chance. so around the mid-90s. These also have specific mark requirements. So you have to have English at least an 80%. And advanced functions in calculus and vectors have to be at least 90%. And then all prerequisite courses calculated admissions average. What this means is that, again, all universities take a look at your top 6 courses. So the rest of your courses, for example, these are 3 courses right here. So the other 3 will just be your top 6. I would just count towards your top 6. And also these are for Ontario high school curriculum. If you're from outside of Ontario or outside of Canada, you can take a look here. Now we're going to talk about the AIF. So as I mentioned, my marks were crazy high. They weren't like crazy high 90, like 98, 99, 97, nowhere around there. But I still managed to get in. And the reason I managed to get in was because of something called the AIF, Admission Informations Form. And if you're familiar with Waterloo's admission process, whether it's just for computer science, for CSBBA, or whether it's for engineering, you know how Waterloo's admissions process works. They have their AIF and they look at your marks. So some things I wanted to mention that I put in my AIF were, so for the first part, where they ask about your educational goals, your interests in your chosen program, etc., etc. I talked about my keen interest in mathematics and technology from a young age, and I talked about how I built those skills. I talked about how I was introduced to computer programming, how I applied those, how I did my research in the field, and an example of where I applied it. I also talked about some leadership opportunities which landed me my business part, because it showed that I can take leadership and I can come up with a plan and initiate that plan. So for example, I talked about in grade 10 biology, in grade 10 science when we did biology, how I tried to implement like this cell counter, because we had to take a picture of slides, right? And we had to count the number of cells in it. So I tried coming up with this thing that used image recognition and tried to count the cells based on that. I got it semi-working, but because I was running out of time, I did not put too much focus into it, but I did. It's something that got my brain working. It started helping me think outside the box. Like I started to think outside the box. I started thinking, what else can I do with programming? Where else can I apply it? And that's something that's very essential for business component. I also talked about all my extracurriculars. For example, I was a part of the cricket team at my high school, all throughout high school. And unfortunately, due to COVID-19, I was not able to captain my side in grade 12. Otherwise, I would have been captain. I also played the drums from a young age. I played a bunch of other percussion instruments. I did math tutoring since grade 9. I also created my own club. I started my own club in grade 9 at my high school. It was called Coding Club, or you can call it Computer Science Club or whatever. So I was the president and founder of that for 4 years. I also attended a couple of conferences. So I attended a couple of machine learning and AI conferences in Toronto and in the local area. I also was a part of Cyber Titans, which is a cybersecurity competition that's funded by the American Army and the American military. And that was actually very interesting because we came top 3 in our gold placing in Canada. So that was a little bit of an accomplishment, and showed that I can apply my skills. I also was the vice president of my school's DECA club. And DECA is basically this business club where you do case studies, you have exams based on a specific topic. So mine mainly was entrepreneurship, but there's finance, there's accounting, etc. So that might have also helped to add to the business side of my application. I also volunteered. I make music. I also mix and DJ music. I attended a bunch of other conferences, like leadership conferences. And also I've been working on website design and programming for a couple organizations. again, going back to the cybersecurity competition, I talked about how we came top 3 and kind of, as they would say, flex on them. And this is actually very important when you're applying to university, especially when you're applying to Waterloo. Think of it as a job, because although you might want the job, you have to show them why they should want you. Why should they want you so bad that they have to accept you? Because it's not about, I need this and this is what I can do with it. It's, this is what I can do for you. So you kind of want to play the reverse card. You want to play the Uno reverse card on them and be like, this is actually what I can do for you. I know you can do this for me, but I can do this for you. So it's kind of like you offering them something. And for that, you have to show that, oh, there's like no better candidate than I am. Don't like slap it in their face, but subtly do it. Like subtly mention and market yourself to them. So like, oh, you know, I did this as well. These are also my hobbies. And oh, speaking of my hobbies, this also happened. So for example, for me, I make music sometimes. So I mentioned about how I performed at places. I performed at weddings. So kind of like link that to your hobbies. So talk about one thing and kind of lead it into how you accomplish something in that, or how you learned something from that, because that's something that they're trying to talk about. I also mentioned how I was a representative speaker for my school board, and I talked about kind of my high school journey to motivate the younger generations. I also did a specialist high skills major, which allowed me to do a co-op in high school itself. And I also attended a lot of conferences and workshops because of it. It helped me develop those skills and kind of determine whether tech is something or computer science is something I could do for the rest of my life. It gave me that hands-on experience. So I talked about that, and I talked about the people I met through there and how they motivated me. That's also a key thing. Next, I also talked about some job titles that I've had. For example, I taught coding for this company called Hatch Canada, or Hatch Coding, I believe it's called now. I also was an information officer at the elections last two years ago. I also was a camp instructor for a robotics and coding camp, and this was actually my co-op position. And then they also ask you for some of your awards or distinctions that you've received. So talking about things like honor roll is a good idea, any sports that you've played and any awards that you've gotten for that, any leadership appreciation that shows that you can take leadership roles and you're good at managing resources, organization, time management. All these skills kind of tie into that. And also, if you're applying to the double degree, it'll help you, because those are the kind of skills that they're looking, that kind of interest that they're looking for the business program. Any other awards that you might have received, any hackathons or coding competitions that you might have excelled in, any other extracurriculars that you may have done very well in, you can mention those. They also have a section for any circumstances that you might have. For example, maybe like, why haven't you been able to participate so much? Why haven't you maybe say your marks are low and you haven't been a part of too many extracurriculars, but there was some incident at home, like maybe someone passed away in your final year, in your grade 12 year, and that's why you weren't as active. But if you can talk about that and you can explain yourself well and talk about your interests and motivation, then you might have a chance. Finally, one last thing I'd like to say is don't go too hard on yourself, because honestly, it's not the end of the day. Not getting into one program or one university doesn't define how smart you are or where you're going to end up in life, because honestly, this is just the entry. This is just the education. There's a lot more, especially in a field like computer science or business. There's a lot, like many different ways that you could go. You could start a business. You could end up working for Google. You could end up working for Amazon. It just depends. Like Waterloo might be, a head start. It might be somewhere where you can start and feel proud of yourself, but it doesn't matter. You today does not define you tomorrow. And that's something that I want everyone to know. Take care and good luck.